political communication, first I will see dissect politics and communication. So politics is something which we experience every day, and communication is also something which we experience every day, right? So when you say political communication, basically it involves the study of government, study of state, various institutions of the state, various structures of the state, and the communication between governed and you say governor, or communication between different associational group, communication between the governing elite. Okay, so that's what basically political communication symbolizes. Then when we say political communication, if I dissect politics and communication, then you see that politics is something uh, the way we perceive, with lot of negativity, right? So it is something which is very dirty, right? And something which is related to self-seeking behavior, right? And also it is related to the cynicism. Okay, but also you see that politics has a lot of relevance from ethical point of view, moral point of view. Politics has a lot of relevance from, you see, different ideological point of view. So I will try to bring in all those ideological perspectives while discussing about politics. When I say and relate politics from ideological point of view, we have different ideologies, like we have liberal ideologies, we have Marxist ideologies, we have also, you see, different variant of liberalism, and apart from this, we have different communication theories, with which also we can relate to uh, politics. Okay, so on most of the theories you have already, uh, I think, discovered those theories. So you have studied those theories like public sphere theory, agenda setting theory. As we have come across those theories, you have understood the gist of the theories. It will not be that difficult to interpret to it in relation to politics. Okay, so when we say uh, 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 politics from even ethical point of view, from moral point of view, we see that politics is concerned with attaining a good society, a just society. That's what has been envisaged by Plato. And politics is also, you see, related to, you see, pursuit of common good. That is another idea of politics. So it is related to that communitarian aspect of politics. Politics is the pursuit of common good. So when we say common good are not those goods which are of our general interest. Like you see this road infrastructures, and you also see the defense mechanism which the state, in which state has demanded, and state usually hold the green. But goods are those goods which actually bring welfare to the society, like goods related to education, health facilities, goods related to age-old, pension scheme, pension scheme for old people. So politics is the pursuit of common good. In that way, also we can view politics, and politics is also discussed or looked at from the perspective of the conciliation of antagonistic interests. So when I say politics is the conciliation of antagonistic interests, uh, it is basically related to the nature of individuals, the way we look at things. Individuals are highly selfish by nature. It is what is being, you say, uh, perceived by political theorists, and definitely individual is self-seeking. So interest doesn't match with each other, and at times interests are also competing. Okay, and there are some antagonistic interests. So politics means reconciliation of those antagonistic interests uh, among individuals, okay, and among groups. And this notion has been provided by the liberal perspective. So liberal perspective looks at politics as a conciliation of the antagonistic interest. And we also have different variants of liberalism, like we have classical liberalism, we have to see this contemporary liberalism, which is equivalent to realism. Okay, these are some ideology what I'm discussing with you, how to look at politics. And you see that it is often not that easy to define politics. But these ideologies have rationalized uh, the system and help to maintain the system around us. So when we're talking about the liberal variety of ideology, when we see that classical liberalism looks at individual as the center of the whole the whole politics. Okay, so it has actually overestimated the role of individual because individual is a rational being, it's a social being, as well as individual is the most capable being. So it has overestimated but underestimated the role of state and said that in order to give individual much more autonomy, state itself need to curtail its power and hence it spoke about that minimal role of the state. But when you are talking about this contemporary liberalism, there are different varieties of this liberalism. Like we have that elitism and pluralism. So elitist variant said that in order to rule, you need to have that caliber, so political caliber, and it also speaks about the highly trained bureaucracy. And there should be competitions, and the competition should be based on certain norms. And there should be a circulation of the elite because mass cannot rule. So there are some notion and belief which are also associated with this ideology that mass cannot, you see, mass cannot rule because mass do not have that caliber, they do not have that intellectual capability to understand the politics. So politics is related to elite concept, and you need to have that ability to understand the affairs of the state. You need to be trained to understand the affairs of the state, and you need to cultivate that capability, and then you will be able to rule the society. And there is a circulation of elite in the sense that in the competition, so one group of elite will be superseded by another group of elite. So there will not be mass who will rule the society. So there is a circulation of elite. There will be elite always who will rule the society. So when you say elite, who are those elite? Right? Elite government itself is an elite. So we are talking about governing elites. So governing elites consist of intellectuals, consist of armies, and consist of bureaucracy, consist of even the other repressive apparatus, you say police is also part of governing elite. So it extends like that way. Okay, and then you say that many times there are also criticism in these ideologies, which I will not discuss in this introductory classes. So I'm going to give you a gist of what politics is from this ideological point of view. And then you see that you have another perspective of politics, which is fitted mostly in relation to the communication between different association, different groups. So you might say that interest groups are there in the society, right? And how interests have been articulated in the society, and how interests are being aggregated in the society. So when we say politics from group perspective, we have already studied group communication, right? And from group perspective also we can understand politics, and then you need to emphasize on interest articulation and interest aggregations. So how will you articulate the interest? It's quite important that your interest is based on your personal experience, the kind of experiential life you are living. So you articulate the interest uh, via certain group. Okay, so here importance of different say interest groups, associational group, non-associational groups, annual groups will um, come into being. So you can also articulate your interest with the help of an institutional setup. So when we say institutional group like search, even bureaucracy, these are institutional group. Okay, so through which also you can articulate your interest. So search and say bureaucracy, via which you can articulate your interest, and there is a formal, you see, formal proceedings. Okay, and through which you can articulate your interest. And then you have other non associational group. Apart from associational group are those groups which are formed on the basis of their, you see, non-political activities. Okay, so there are different groups like you see this NGOs, different NGOs, pressure groups, or associational groups, and they also articulate their interest um, based on some formal procedure. And then you have also non-associational group, which are usually formed in family line, you see, in school and college apparatus, through which also you can articulate your interest. And then you have another set of group that is also a kind of interest articulation via group, like a normic group. Normic group, which is usually spontaneous because it forms out of riot, hesitations. So in different formal and informal gatherings, you articulate your interest. So political communication has an intrinsic relation to interest articulation. Okay. The way you articulate your interest in different setup, formal, informal setup, and via different formal and informal procedure. Okay, within a structure. So that actually matters. Moving on to interest aggregation from interest articulation, we see aggregation has a different role from interest articulation. Like if you see this interest aggregations, aggregation is basically related to aggregation of all the interest of all those different set of groups. Aggregation of interest of, you see, associational, non-associational, economic, institutional groups are taken into considerations. There are also aggregation in this agencies, aggregation is say institutions who aggregate the interest and present in front of public in the form of manifesto. Political party is one kind of aggregation, interest aggregation, say agency or institutions. They aggregate the interest and present in front of you in the form of manifesto. At the same time, policymakers who usually formulate a policy, suppose there is an interest group which is working in favor of women, demand a favorable status of women, and continuously use special techniques on this government, and government also gradually realize the urgency of uh, devising out some policy, and accordingly we see this policy like investment perspective plan for women for development has come out. So like that way, interest has been articulated and interest has been aggregated. Okay, so that is another domain of politics, and this is based viewed by pluralistic, perspective, which is another variant of liberalism. So, as I have told you, that different types of liberalisms are there. Classical liberalism viewed politics from a highly individualistic role. Okay, and we see this contemporary liberalism has different types and varieties, like you have elitist is one, pluralism is one. So when we are talking about pluralism, we are talking about those group communications, interest articulation and interest aggregations. So in pluralism also we actually see uh, existence of lot of competing and contrasting uh, ideas, contrasting say interest, and it believes in voluntary as well as you say competing notion of politics. When you say voluntary, so these groups are being formed and organized on the basis of some interest, and they are motivated to fulfill those interests, motivated to even work for the cause for which those groups are being formed. And then you see that when you say the, the competing in the sense that there are variety of groups and variety of competing ideas which usually clash with each other, and hence ideas are competing and contrasting. But you see, it has made the government much more accountable to the people, and government which is based on consent. So it has a different pluralism has a different you say different perspective about the role of state, the you see this the role of power, okay, and the way state and government function is much more accountable in the way as there is an equilibrium which is maintained across different groups. Okay? So that is quite important, and here also you see, you might even ask me the kind of job profile that you are going to have after doing this course. You may also emerge out as a very good political analyst. You can land up working in many NGOs as a political analyst, as an in media house, in even um, various foreign secretary offices or foreign secretary at national level, at even global level. So your role is to understand the politics, or not have a degree. It's right that you do not have a political science degree, but this course will help you to understand the nitty-gritties of those political communications, because we will analyze. Uh, I will also try to invert the understanding of various strands, and how we forecast those various strands. You analyze the survey, analyze the opinion poll, and also have a clear understanding of different theories and perspectives, which will help you to understand local politics, which will help you to understand this trend. You can forecast the trend, what will happen, when it will happen. Okay, and it will depend upon your motivation also. It will be dependent upon your, you say, your willingness and your political behavior, and that is also a part of study. Let me tell you, your behavior, your political behavior, your political motivations, your attitude, your belief. So everything is taken into consideration in studying political communications. Okay, so how behavior is being shaped, okay, how attitude is being shaped, and to what extent you have participated in the politics, and in what way you have participated in this politics. Okay, and then we have also another ideology, all of you, Marxist ideology. As I have already told you, I'm going to give you a gist of it. And when it's a Marxist ideology, you all know that it is basically it is related to class struggle, right? So it says that the um, history of all hitherto existing uh, society is the history of class struggle. So Marxist views of on politics is based on the class struggle. So when you say the class is also important, how will you define class? Okay, I'll make it interactive because otherwise you might sleep or you might also simply go into hibernation mode. So what is class according to you? What do you understand by class?
I think class is defined by it's more on the economic sector, like financially, like weak or poorer section. So that will determine, like upper class will have like more resources, more financially stable rather than the lower class people. It is more related to the financial aspect, I think.
Good.
So it will just be the ruling class and the one with the people who have the resources, and the other the have-nots. It would be the bourgeois and the labor.
Okay. According to Marx's interpretation. Okay. Okay.
If
Ebony?
class could be a group of people sharing something common. It could be in terms of economics, it could be in terms of politics, or any of the other sector which we talk about. But there should be some a particular group which is having something in common creates a class. I think.
Very good. It's a very general understanding of class and anybody else. Okay. So when we say class, class is basically uh, something which is, let me tell you, it is also a organized, class is organized for a certain purpose and having certain function. Okay, so there are also different variety of class in the society, apart from haves and haves not. Um, um, uh, Unlike what Marxist has said, or we use what they produce, because we also see that class is also an economically numerical category. So we see that the relation of class, which we see our relation, which the historically organized uh, that means of productions, our relation with that means of productions, and also our relation with that social organization of labor, which actually determine the class. So that means class is also related to differentiation of activities. So as ET has also said, it is related to differentiation of different activities, but a class is related to purpose. So family itself is a class, and if you say this women, they also consist of a class, male class, female class. Apart from you see different categories of other class, have not. So rich and poor, and the female, and you said is slave. So you see that class has also class exists for a purpose, and class is always known by the consciousness of kind. So class has that consciousness which you cannot erode. So just because it is a class of that kind, it will also have consciousness of that kind. Suppose a family will behave in a certain pattern because family consciousness is different from a consciousness of a category of student. Student itself is a class. Okay, and also you see this consciousness of even the state. If you look at state as a class, is different from the consciousness of family because certain function is also attached to the different variety of classes. So you also can say that a person who born in the month of March, April, or May can form a class. No, not related to that. But women is a class, so they have a different consciousness altogether. Male is a class. Okay, we have a different set of consciousness altogether. Like the role of state. uh, Along with this consciousness, another related aspect is the function. So when you say the function, role of state and function of state comprise comprise like the uh, maintenance of law and order, and apart from this also providing this welfare services. So different ideology has create a different consciousness to the concept of class. And the family, role of family as a class, what family should do. The earlier notion of family was related to reproduction activities. So it is reproduction of species, it is role of family, which is associated with. But now we look at family from different point of view, from nurturing angle, even from nourishing angle. We can also make a community as a family. We can see, look at it as that community, as that way. So these are postmodern understanding of, you see, uh, the class. So class has got a different understanding, different variety, and postmodern modern understanding is different just because we always try to look at things, perceive things from our everyday experience. Okay, and we analyze it at national level, global level. Uh, Hence, when we're talking about this class, from Marxist perspective, there are two class, haves and haves not. And Marx also spoke about the class struggle and spoke about the socialist society, establishment of the socialist society, where working class or proletariat will be ruling after the revolutionary overthrow of the capitalist class, bourgeois class. And Marx also he said for a stateless and classless society. The view is quite utopian, uh, which not necessarily executable. But apart from this notion, we can also see that when you say politics, politics are associated uh, with propaganda and persuasion. Okay. So propaganda, it has got different, you say, different types of propagandas, and also different techniques involved to create a propaganda. And you see, mass media has a role to create a propaganda in the society. As you already know, how public service broadcasting has been used for propaganda during the First World War, during Second World War, right? And you might know about Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, which happened to be the propaganda wing of USA. How these broadcasters disseminated propaganda during Second World War, during Cold War period. Okay, and they have been stationed at different say constituency. This Voice of America was even quite popular in Asia, even in Russia, Asia, Southeast Asia, in Central Asia. Okay, so it creates a propaganda in favor of USA, their policy, their liberalism, and their notion of liberalism is related to human rights. So when we study human rights, which is also a part of political communication, let me tell you, this is entirely Western concept. But when you are talking about social change is also related to political communication. But it is more about an Eastern concept. Western do not view social change can be that possible, and even if that is possible, it can be replicated in the form of changing of institution, changing of these structures and forms. And it is important when there is maladjustment in the society, when there is disharmony in the society, when uh, there are other problem or antagonism in the society because of the pathological nature of this individual, then change is necessary. And there are also different theory of social change, and we also look at the Marxist interpretation of social change, revolutionary change Marx spoke of, and we have incremental change, which we get to find in the Fabian scholarship and different other perspective. So you see that political communication is quite vast because you need to understand the trend of the society. You need to understand the government, what government is doing, how government is functioning, what state is all about, what nation is all about, and how government is communicating with the citizen. So when you study the communication flow from government to citizens, you always find a kind of imbalance, right? That communication flow from government to citizen is more than communication flow or information flow from citizen to government. So here I have spoke of communication. Basically, it is related to information and even politics. Okay, so this information flow from government to citizen is more than information flow from citizen to government, and hence the communication, uh, political communication is more hegemonic than you see petitionary. So there are also different types of political communication. There are different facets of political communication. So we have that hegemonic communication, that is one, and we have that say this is called the petitionary communication. Second, we have elitist communication. Third, and fourth, we have associational communication. Hegemonic communication basically refers to communication uh, uh, from government to citizen, and associational communications, as I have already told you, it happens between these groups and associations, how interest have been articulated and aggregated. So it refers to associational communication. Elitist communication, communication between the governing elite, among the policymakers, how they communicate, how they formulate a strategy, how they define a problem, and it is also related to rhetoric. Then we have petitionary communication, which is related to communication from citizen to government. So we see that when we study various forms of news, various forms of we see format of news, it falls under those who fall under uh, mostly hegemonic as well as petitionary communication. Right. So you see this newspaper it also has a hegemonic role when news happen to be the output of government design. So it becomes a hegemonic communications. So we also have those four theories of state, which we already know. So authoritarian theories of state, which actually said that this media is the output of the happens to be um, what the government try to disseminate. So, when you say that academic communication is much more related to what governments persuade us to believe. So, communication is political communication is related here to rhetoric and persuasion. Rhetoric, you might know about rhetorical communication, which is equivalent to the concept called persuasion. And when you say rhetoric is more about identifying a problem. It is more about defining a problem. And then after you define a problem, you actually identify the audience. Okay, so you identify the audience who can solve the problem, and then you translate the problem into the various interpretative norms uh, which are available in the society. So you identify the interpretative norms which are available in the society, be it the belief system, and attitude, behavior, and fear, anxiety, and then you see that excitement, and you translate those problems um, into those interpretative norms, and that's how you will create a message. And this might be a propaganda, this might be a persuasive message, this might be a resistant message, and this might be a kind of message which can bring revolutionary change. Okay, so it is also dependent upon the interest. It is based on your interest, based on your perception of the reality. So news has a role here in political communication. It has got that rhetorical role because we actually see that there is a declining amount of political news, and the quality of news has also declined. At the same time, we also see that um, uh, lot of like infotainment content and dumping down speed has have to say uh, overpower the whole news background. Okay, so a lot of aestheticization is there, and then emotionalization is another perspective. So aestheticization is related to this thought related to concept, the style and appearance. So we think more about the style, appearance, and also how we package the news to make it persuasive, and also emotionalization. So these are certain trends which have given the political communication new direction, emotionalization of the content, emotionalization of the content and the language which is uttered by the political actors. So how political actors behave when there is a hegemonic communication, communicating with the citizens. Okay, so then we actually see that you, you see that now narratives are highly emotional, and you cannot see that this is something which should not happen. This is a trend which is good because earlier we view politicians as you see as a robot, right? And as a very cool being who doesn't have a character. But now politician is related to that emotionalization concept. Their narratives are related to emotionalizations. So the way they use the language can be related to the everyday sensitivity of these people, and also the outcome which we experience from the policy, the way policy is designed, the expectations of the people about the outcome of the policy, which is also related to the way language is being used. So it is also quite important the way we use language in political communications. And you see this voting behavior another perspective of political communication when you go for a vote. So definitely you own vote based on the liking of one candidate. Because now we look into whether that candidate can able to run the nation, whether that candidate can able to run the economy, right? And also we have knowledge about this policy aspect. Okay, so this is what is the result of political socialization. So, like what happened? My grandma, who grandma he is suffering from amnesia now. But whenever she goes for vote, she used to ask us, like, what is the policy content? Can you put on a policy? It will be ভাল হবে না, বেয়া হবে না? Like this kind of like queries she come up with. Okay, so that is her political attitude. So she wants to know whether this party will do good to the nation or not. So it is not on the basis of likings, but okay, she is the one she liked Hiteshwar Soikia very much. Okay, so she used to say that whenever that person comes, she usually come even if she doesn't understand much, but she thinks that okay, I'll come and I'll listen to him. Uh, so, so that is the kind of attitude which is related to this emotionalization concept, a kind of attachment which you also develop with a political actor at times. That is also part of study of political communications. Why does it happen? You know? And you see that most of the time it happens that uh, this concept, like you see public sphere. Public sphere, what do you understand by this public sphere? This is entirely a mass communication concept. Right? So it is basically it is a sphere which can create a communicative rationality. Right? These are some network which can create that logical rationality, communicative rationality in the society, and you can communicate different and accommodate different diverse point of view. So, um, Jürgen Habermas, when discussed about public sphere, he also spoke of the necessity of being a vibrant public sphere, right? And strong public sphere, and that is possible when there is a free access to government content first, when there is higher level of education with ICT skills second, and third when there is you see, when there is the cohabitation of different media and different informations together. So there is no selective exposure of informations, but there is an existence of dual media. And fourth, when there is uh, you see, when their people experience the freedom of speech and expression. So, so these are the you see idea which are associated with a strong, vibrant public sphere, and most of the time, we public being also as a public being, we we see that we enter into our private self in the next moment, and public sphere also in the same way enter into our private sphere, and our day-to-day experience are also circulated in this public sphere, and that's what also determine our understanding of one particular candidate, one particular actor, how they react, what way they will react. Okay, so that is also part of political communication, and then we see different types of uh, news. You're supposed to write some news stories, and they read a lot of political content now. And in order to inculcate this political attitude, as I have already told you, that we are driven more by this style, appearance, look. But what is important for us is uh, the content and substance, and for that we need to understand the politics behind it. Okay, politics behind any issue. So now you are a student, right? So as a student also, see you have different interests, different issues, right? So recent issues, this free hike that happens to be on issues, right? So how will you react to that? This is also another part of political communication, which is basically a petitionary kind of communication, and this also falls under you say, associational communication. Okay, so this is important, hence, and then you see that culture, political belief, attitude, notion, which usually permeate into that system is quite important. Okay, so the culture, the kind of culture when we say political culture, which is prevalent in one state is different from the culture which is prevalent from another state. So political culture determines the nature and attitude of individuals. Okay, so your belief system, your the kind of norms which you internalize, that also define the political culture. So the national pride, at system level, we also see the national pride happens to be a culture that binds the society, nationality that binds the society. So that is a part of political culture. And at process level also, we have different types of cultural ingredients. The types of awareness, kind of awareness and cognition and knowledge about political objectivism, so government, parliamentary affairs, and about any trend. Okay, so you need to develop interest about any trends, about you see the society, about different divisions in the society, like caste, about linguistic qualities, ethnicity. These are different divisions in the society. They can create divisions in terms of this policy outcome also. So our expectation from the government policy that is generally reflected in policy level, but there are various divisive force in the society, and in this division force, a lot of parochialization will happen. So parochializations and narrow binding, and also chauvinistic bindings taking to one's ethnicity, one's language, one's you say that caste. Okay, and that has also influenced the policy outcome, and that determines the process culture, our knowledge and cognition about the existing system and political object, and then our effective disposition about that political object. How much emotionally we are attached to that you see that cult and political object or an issue or a tradition or an interest. So that is affective dispositions. That is another ingredient of political culture. And then we also have the judgment, cognitive, then you see this affective, and you also have that another culture which is related to judgment, which is based on your opinion of any trend issues, which also becomes a political culture. So opinions, now we also see this in public where opinions are circulated. Okay, but these opinions are not yet informed. Okay, so in order to have an informed opinion, you need to know the trend, why it is happening, how it is happening. So that actually determines the political communication. Okay. Uh, and also it depends upon the socialization process. Okay, the kind of attitude your family has related to politics. So if the belief system of your family related to politics, your parents might favor one party, and that inclinations you also inherit from your parents. This happens, and this is called the primary socialization. So after having discussion with your parents, so definitely you will inculcate their value system, their political values, their political behavior, their political attitude. Right. And then secondary socialization, which is usually happen in the school setup. It is quite important now in virtual setup whether the secondary socialization is happening or not. So, which is usually determined by your peer factor. Peer is the influencing force in understanding the behavior, shaping an attitude towards politics. And then we also see that engagement and political participation, that at highest level it depends upon uh, your participant attitude, that like cognition, that as I have told you about this affective disposition and awareness about this political aspect. So this is basically about political communications. So I mean, if you have any questions, we can ask. Ginat, Sunita.
Yes, ma'am. I think there's no more doubt. So
Okay. There's no doubt.
I mean, there's no doubt on my end. I don't know about the others.
Okay, Rukshita has asked what is the concept of rhetoric. Explain the concept of rhetoric once more. So rhetoric is basically related to persuasion. It's your ability to convince the audience, convince the receivers. How you will convince the receivers? Even there is 1 ounce of doubt, then also you see this persuading is persuaded by persuaders, and that is what is the outcome of rhetorical communications, where actually you need to identify the problem in the rhetorical communication. There are certain elements, so where you basically identify the problem, and then you also define the problem, then you identify the audience who can solve the problem, and then you interpret different you see norms which is available in the society. So that avails the society, like the norms, like you see this belief system, then traditions, trait, your perception that the audience have. Okay, so that you understand, and then you translate the problem into the interpretative norms. Okay, if somebody is having much more fear, so giving him more fear. Okay, if somebody is excited enough, giving him more excitement. But at the same time, you see, so there are also actors that try to create a balance between this fear and excitement. Hence, that also lies in interest, and then interpreting it on the basis of like translate it on the basis of those interpretative norms in the society, and that's how you can create a message. So that's how slogan is being created, political slogan, and that's how you see this campaign message have been created. Okay. So rhetoric has an importance in political marketing. It has an importance in political persuasion. Even it has an importance in political propaganda. As I have told you, propaganda it is a systematic attempt to manipulate the cognitions. Systematic attempt to shape the perception to a desired end. So when you say systematic attempt to shape the perception to a desired and to manipulate cognitions, which actually involve that negativity. But in persuasion and in rhetorical communications, you do not actually have that negativity. You know, you do not have much more room for negativity. But here in rhetorical, propaganda, you have that room for negativity. Okay, so here we see that uh, there are different techniques of propaganda. So I have already taken one class on those techniques of propaganda. So I will not elaborate those techniques, but it has been an asset for government to disseminate the message. And difference between propaganda and education is that education will teach you how to think about. Education will not teach you what should you think about, but propaganda will teach you what should you think about, because it will give you selective exposure of informations. It will not give you all the exposure of information, selective exposure of information based on which you will fail. Okay, so but at the same time, so um, you also, as a campaigner, you also need to create a propaganda at times. But you see the benefit of those who are exposed to propaganda is positive or not. So that is a matter of question. So while you are creating a propaganda, while you are creating a you say rhetorical message, whether you are creating a persuasive message, in should be the benefit of the larger section of the society. Okay, so that is quite important. And so political communication is also rhetorical communications, so which is related to the persuasiveness of the audience and also say persuading the, the receivers. Okay, so okay, anything else? Anything else? And also you see that now as a student, so you have emerged out as a class, as I have already told you, you have emerged out as a class, and you do have different kind of interest. We have discussed about this association and communication, which is a part of political communication, right? So as a part of association and communications, your aspirations, needs, and preferences are articulated in the form of interest, and that is reflected in your role at NGOs, in different groups or different even, membership at a party politics. Okay, so you see that there are also different aspects of your interest. Like you see that it is called this is called ideological interest, which is actually related to the uh, idea of changing or challenging the social order. And then when you say you are related to this programming politics, which is also related to your affiliation to one political party ideology, but it is different from the ideological meanings because it is related to challenging the whole social order. And the symbol-based politics is also there, which with which students can relate more, and it is related to changing the regime. And then issue-based politics. Issue-based politics, or you see this interest-based politics, these are quite similar in its intent. Uh, when your uh, say that your persuasive like hesitations or resistance hesitation is related to some, you see, some issues, and these issues may be very trivial issues, these issues may be serious issues, okay, and these issues may be related to state level politics, it may be related to national level politics. So it is quite important for a student also to have that attitude towards politics, and for that you can relate to those ideological programming issue and interest-based politics, and it has got its different, to say, uh, different order and at its own place. And when you say this, say, there are different techniques also through which you can express dissent. But the most important is to communicate your the ideas across the table and making it accepted. As there are different interest groups, so your role should be to communicate your ideas, and you need to work as a group. Let me tell you that it should not be like this is my problem and this is their problem. So, as far as I'm not being affected, I'm all fine. It should not be like that. But as a students, you all are affected, right? To certain decisions, and that will give you an identity. But at the same time, as a student, you are also always marginalized. Like we also say women are always marginalized. So this is a part of politics. Let me tell you, this is a part of politics. They articulate their interest, and it is quite important to articulate your interest. Without articulating the interest, you cannot change. You cannot bring social change. Okay, so it is must that you articulate your interest. Okay, so you see that in the society there are also systems so which exploit, and at times when you uh, uh, keep on like getting letting yourself getting exploited. So this not as a student, as a marginalized class. So things will not change. So hence, you say you also need to understand politics from, you say, a class perspective. You need to understand politics from caste perspective. Uh, and also there are different dimensions, like you see this equality, liberty, equal opportunity, which is very important. And most of the time, we also I think that uh, 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 when there is, if we go and speak something, we uh, might lose the opportunity which is due to us. And there might be different reason for this content. And also the way society look at this containment is also a matter of you see keeping yourself silence. So there is also a spiral of silence among students nowadays. When we're talking about student has emerged out as a class in certain universities, emerged out as a class. In our university also we have a setup, we have a student council. So formally we have a setup, we have a structure through which you can rectify grievances, you can also say address authority about your queries. And it is quite important, and this is a part of interest articulations. So you later know your interest across the table and get it accepted. You later know your trouble, grievances, accept it, and at least first informed, and then you get it accepted. And this is a part of persuasive intent, or you see that persuasive hesitation. I'm not telling about you go and hesitate. Don't go and hesitate. Okay. So right to social action is there, but for that you need to have a social. You need to have a structure, like NGO has different strategy. They divide up to fight for a cause. Okay. So, and student is more marginalized because they do not have that identity because of the time span, limited time span they spend in the campus. Okay, and they could not have that stability. They could not have that continuity of that identity, ideological identity. Okay, but what happened? There are discontentment among the students, and at times, if we keep on, you see, promoting this spiral of silence, it will keep on suppressing. And once this discontentment will burst out, so it is better to go for persuasive technique and articulate your grievances, write a letter, also address to these authorities. This is a part of political communication, let me tell you. So there are different techniques, like you also go for revolutionary change, you can go for revolutionary hesitations, you can go for resistant hesitation or persuasive hesitations. Don't go for revolutionary hesitation because this is not likely at times. But what is important is persuasive hesitation. It is important, and it is important because you also know that it will not sow your indiscipline because UGC has in 1960 appointed a committee and also designated three behavior as indiscipline: the disrespect to student, disrespect to teachers, student disrespect to teachers, and also destroying the public properties and other. And perhaps, and there is another one, uh, behavior which is termed as indiscipline. And it is also seen that women students, they are moved into following and complying with conventional norms, and at times they are not that discontented. But yeah, if you feel something, you articulate. This is very, very important from political perspective. So whatever you feel, you articulate it in such a way, but not let it disturb the whole environment. Okay, so you also need to know how will you articulate your problem. So this is what is important from political uh, communication perspective. Anything else you want to say? If you do not have any query, then I will end. So I'll end the session.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. And I'll be providing you some recorded video lectures, which I have already recorded as a part of this course last year. So I'll provide you those lectures. You go through these lectures and you find out, you get some problem regarding understanding any aspect which I have discussed there. So you can bring that out and we will discuss it already in the class. So will that be okay? If I won't come from for live class every day,
Yes, ma'am, I think that will be okay.
that will be fine, no?
Ma'am.
Some lectures are already recorded. That will be fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Have a good day.